Good morning, everyone. Today is the day we're going to be moving on to step 3. And because I can't be with you today, I'd like to share with you a few things to keep in mind as you work through today's work. So now that you've done all of the note cards, you've finished the bibliographic slides about the person that you have learned about, and you've also completed all 5 sets of the color-coded slides, it's time now to review them all and to think about what we've learned about the person we decided to study. We want to make sure that before we move on to step 4 tomorrow, that all of our slides are rock solid, meaning that not only do you have text on the slides, but they're well thought out, and that those events will fit well into the timeline that we create later this week. So today we're going to take a look at the 4 steps that are along the left-hand side. They correspond with the color-coded slides that you've been working on over the course of the last few days. So today you're going to be taking some time first to look at all 5 event slides, making sure that the events that you've written about are 5 of the most significant events in that person's life. After you've confirmed that yes, those are the 5 most significant events, you're going to move on to the next 3 slides and make sure that they fit well together. So next you're going to look at the long-term impacts of that event. So make sure that it's a thoughtful explanation that you've written about how that event had an authentic long-term impact on the person's life or on historical events over time. So you'll review the event that you've written about, and then you'll think, have I written a thoughtful explanation and made a connection and explained well how that event really did have a long-term impact on the person's life? The third slide is the connection slide, and this is a slide that I think is most tricky for students. And for many of you, I had mentioned that connections often happen at unexpected times. It might happen when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, or maybe when you're walking the dog. Connections sometimes happen unexpectedly. And so hopefully over the course of the last few days, you've been able to make really clear and relevant connections to one of these options. Remember, you had 3 choices: a historical connection, answering the question, how does this event remind me of another historical event? An emotional or personal connection, how does this event remind me of a situation in my own life? Or an event connection, what military or political event was taking place at the same time as this event in the slaves or the abolitionist life? Now remember, you don't need all 3. You just need one for each of the events, each of the 5. So you'll have 5 connections. They don't all have to be personal connections. They don't all have to be historical connections. They can be a combination of all of them, or any of them. So I want to give a few more examples of what a connection looks like, because I think this is where a lot of you are going to spend a bulk of your work today. So let me show you the example that we looked at a few days ago. Here's my connection slide. Remember, I told you I had learned a lot about Levi Coffin. He was considered the president of the Underground Railroad, and I had learned by reading some information about him from Issues and Controversies in American History, one of our databases that we have access to on our databases page, that early in Levi Coffin's life, he became passionate about slavery being something that was morally wrong. And in my connection, I chose to do a personal connection that oftentimes in our lives, the course for our lives are set when we're very young. Another example of a connection for this particular event might be a historical connection. Now, historical connections don't have to take place at the same time as the event. And so here's my connection that I might make that's historical. Remember that Levi Coffin fought against injustice. Well, there were a lot of people throughout history that have done similar kinds of things. They've had that deep conviction in their heart where they've known something was morally and ethically wrong, and they've fought against it in a lot of different ways. Levi Coffin fought against slavery by helping to conduct slaves from the South to the North to freedom. Well, during World War II, 100 years later, there was a woman, Corrie ten Boom. She lived in Europe, and the Nazis occupied the country in which she lived. And she was a Christian woman, and she saw the Jewish people who were taken to concentration camps, and she knew their end, that most of them would die. And she decided to hide Jewish people in her home, and in that way she protected them. So do you see the connection there, that although Levi Coffin and Corrie ten Boom lived in very different times, they both fought against injustice and protect those who were weaker than themselves and helped. So that's an example of a historical connection. There would be event connections too that would connect to this event in Levi Coffin's young life. And you get to choose what kind of connection you want to make. Sometimes it helps to talk to different people about connections. So invite your parents to weigh in, and they might have an idea too that might help. And that's okay to do. All right, so again, you're going to spend a bulk of your time working on connections probably. The fourth area that you're going to look at today and review is the source card. Remember, for this, you're going to choose a relevant and compelling supporting piece of information, and it's a choice. You can choose a primary source. Primary sources are materials from the actual time period, event, or created by a participant or a witness. So this could be a newspaper clipping. It could be a journal article. It might be a photograph or a painting. Something that connects to that event. The other option is a link to additional information. So in my example that I showed you last week, my event was Levi Coffin seeing these African American men shackled and walking along the roadside, and his father had explained that they were being taken to the slave market to be sold as slaves. Well, I found a fabulous website that explained more of what was happening in the North. And the website explained in great detail how abolitionists worked to communicate with African American parents, telling African American parents that they needed to be very careful to protect their children, because their children could be kidnapped, and many were. They were taken away from their parents and sold into slavery. So the link that I have here goes to a website that explains that. All right, we want to make sure that before Thursday, before tomorrow, that everything is cleaned up on our note cards. I cannot stress that enough, that it's very important that every note card really is rock solid and ready to go, because after tomorrow, we won't have a lot of time to clean up our slides and clean up our content that we've gathered. We're going to move forward pretty quickly from here on out, getting ready to create that timeline and get it published. So when you have questions, you're welcome to email me today, or if you feel like you can wait until Thursday, I'd like to meet with each of you on Thursday to look at your note cards and then move on to step 4. So, good luck today. Work hard. Use your time really wisely. This is important work that you're doing today for the whole project success. So, we will see you tomorrow.